Welcome to the Ill Rared podcast.
We're two lads know nothing, but they'll tell you all about it.
And we're talking about the moon now. You promised it.
I'm happy to talk about the moon, for sure. That's, you don't need to twist my arm on that.
Well, full disclosure.
Okay. Disclosure to me, or disclosure to the...
Both, really.
To the unknown masses?
I have no understanding or even concept, and actually even my imagination fails to move towards what you have against the moon. I'm as uninformed as everybody else as to what you're going to speak about.
Well, it's not necessarily that I have anything against the moon, but I do think it's overly romanticized. People are like, "Oh,
it's overly romanticized."
It is like people love the moon, and the moon is very fucking suspicious. Like,
get over yourself, moon. You got a big head, does he?
Like fucking pock-faced head on it. But no, but like, we're always told, the moon, blah, blah, blah. And I understand it because, it's the most focal thing in our sky and in the night sky, which is very romantic. We evolved as a species looking up at it and wondering what it is.
And also using it as a way of telling where you are in the month and stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Before we had a calendar in our pockets, or even on our walls.
That's it. The hunter's moon and the harvest moon
and thereafter, that's where
sturgeon moon.
Why it's overly romanticized realistically is not just about the beauty of it.
Yes, we've lived alongside the goings
all the old writing that we have, like Shakespeare and things that would have romanticized the moon for good reason. Yeah.
But I think no one's ever looked at it
objectively.
That's it. I think we're a bit too forgiving of it, whereas, there's a NASA engineer that came out and said it's easier to prove that the moon doesn't exist than to prove that the moon does exist. That's how fucking strange it is. It's like so massive of a satellite compared to anything else that we've observed, like in our universe or in in our universe. I was going to say in our solar system, but also in all the other planetary bodies that are going around all the other stars that we've been able to observe. But we haven't seen anything that's like the size that our moon is of the Earth. And then all of the contemporary things that they say about how it's being created, like, there was a massive asteroid crashed into the Earth when it was molten and a big piece came off and turned into the moon.
I hate, and I'll tell you this, I love the idea of doing research on, scientifically speaking here, of, that sounds like a good time to be like, how could possibly this happen, as an idea, and having a big crack about it. And same like the Big Bang Theory and all that. This is just it's just literally a theory. It's just an idea of this could have happened this way. But, and this is where, I'm not going to get into too much about that, but this is where I feel when people take these things as fact, or as this is what happened, and especially militant atheists, I have a big problem with. It's just so preachy, and I don't even care if they're right. I'm not even saying they're wrong. Yeah. It's just leave me alone.
and that's the thing, is that I was a militant atheist. I was one of those guys, that was like, oh, well, actually,
it's good that you can cringe at yourself now.
I was a fucking trust the science guy, you don't know Heisenberg's uncertainty principle.
But there's nothing that somebody could say to me, even if, and it's, don't get me wrong, my understanding of when we get deep into science like that, I'm going to switch off. If I really tried, I probably could understand it, but I don't. So I'm not going to purport to, obviously, but there's nothing that somebody could explain to me, Big Bang Theory, whatever, that makes me believe that everything just sort of happened. There has to be some sort of overarching, in my head. This is a me personally thing. I understand people who don't want that. And I don't go too far into that territory, obviously, but something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's just, because I used to be the science this and science that. Not that I was ever a science nerd. I was an asshole when I was a kid. And
that was part of it.
I never studied. I never went. I was very book smart, I always got good grades, but like I was too busy out running around getting in fights and fucking chasing girls.
You stop there, yeah.
I got to be in a rock band, and but so I was never that interested in science until I was probably in my sort of late teens, early 20s, and had a little baby and a full-time job. I wasn't running around just getting drunk all the time. It's like
then I something else.
Yeah, so I kind of filled it with like learning that stuff, but it was a lot of self-directed learning. But it was very much on the scientific side of things, and now looking back, whenever you kind of realize that we only perceive like 5% of the universe, and there's so much stuff that we don't know about, like dark energy and dark matter. And as you say, like I do believe in the Big Bang Theory as our best explanation of what we have so far, and just that we don't know what happened before that. I'm not saying that like that was the start of all space and time, but anything before that, we don't know what it was. But they kind of, they base it on models of the expansion of the universe. But now in the last while, they've seen that like the universe is expanding faster than they thought that it was expanding, and it's accelerating. And so if it can do these things that we didn't expect it to do, then it's very possible that has also happened in the last, 13 billion years. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the moon.
Yes, we're talking about the most part of it. I mean, the moon's part of all that.
It is part of it, but just to establish, like, I used to be very much a science, the science is the science kind of thing. And now, as I'm getting older, I'm certainly not a religious person, but I understand that there's a lot of things that we don't understand about the world, and I have space.
Science doesn't explain vibes.
Yeah, science doesn't explain vibes. But I've got space for the spirituality of the world, let's say, and like that there are things that we can feel and that we intrinsically understand that we haven't been able to explain yet.
Yeah.
And I love that science is trying to explain it. I think as long as science is trying to explain it, and there's a lot of bad science out there, and a lot of people that say believe the science, they mean believe the scientists who were paid by massive pharmaceutical companies they find this exact answer that they wanted, or paid by the smoking lobby. They say, oh yeah, no, this is fine, and like
old man yelling at clouds time. But this is there's science was like at its peak in like the 70s. I want to say, when it was just for the sake of science.
Oh, I would go even further back. I would say
potentially, the 1500s, Michelangelo.
Yeah, like the 1800s, where you just had guys injecting themselves.
Well, yeah,
shit.
I agree with that.
They're like, know what? I'm going to live or die by my science.
It was just like, I'm just doing this for the crack and just to see what happens. It wasn't because somebody's going to pay me to do it.
It's the pursuit of knowledge. I love the pursuit of knowledge in science. If that is it. And that is kind of its purest intention, but it gets perverted from that.
Very murky.
It's not like, I don't think a lot of what we see as modern science and the scientific papers and stuff like that. And a lot of people say, oh, it has to be peer reviewed, it has to be repeatable by scientists, blah blah blah. But statistics are so easy to skew.
That's like my whole deal. That's what I do all day.
Statistics are so easy. They just
so hard.
say this about the findings.
Yep.
And not say about this part of the findings, and then people go, oh, okay, so it's like
everything. You can say everything factually correct and give a complete lie at the same time.
You can completely spin, completely cook the books, and I think that's what a lot of the problem is these days. Is that is what you get.
My problem is that I'm really good at it, so I understand it intrinsically, so I don't trust anybody else unless I have like all their data. Give me all your raw data and let me make my own decision.
So that's why I don't like the trust the science. People say trust the science, and especially since the pandemic, it was just beaten over the head.
Awful.
Because I was hesitant about the vaccines, and I was like, I don't know. Certainly if you're old, or you're at risk, or you're immunocompromised, for sure, get the vaccine. But saying everybody on the planet needs to get this vaccine that you're getting paid 30 quid a pop for, that's a lot of billions.
Yeah, exactly.
You're making a lot of money.
There's a difference there.
You seem very motivated for everybody to get this. It should
never be like a private company that's creating that. Realistically,
no.
That's the bones of it.
No, it should never be a for-profit. And once it became like the greatest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich in all of human history.
Yep.
I kind of had a problem with that. And whenever I had, people fucking shouting at me, screaming, "Oh, not wanting to get a vaccine is killing people," and I'm saying, did you read the safety data sheet from it? And they're like, no. And I was like, I was the only person, I think, that actually read the fucking thing when it came out. Everybody was just like, oh, it's great, 100% effective. And I was reading going, where does it say 100% effective?
Nothing says this.
Like, all I could see was, some participants had these really bad side effects. Why is no one talking about this? But anyway, that's a different story.
It's a very
not
different
that
story.
I am not a fucking scientific guy. It's totally self-directed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do peer reviews. I don't do none of that kind of shit. There are people who are much more qualified than me to talk about it. But the moon is fucking weird. And
and like, are we talking? Like, what's? Let's do a couple of things aesthetically weird. Like, you don't like it's got little craters and stuff.
Well, the craters,
smooth enough for you.
The craters are for sure. No, it's too smooth. Is the problem? It's too smooth. And let me tell you why. Because. So you didn't expect that, did you, motherfucker?
I didn't have Niall tell me the moon doesn't have enough imperfections on my bingo card now.
Okay, so that's the fact that it's so massive compared to the Earth is one thing. The fact that the leading idea that we have is that the moon is made of part of the Earth that came off and spun off and became its own satellite.
Is that a thing? I didn't know that was a thing.
That it was hit whenever the Earth was still completely molten, that it was hit by an asteroid, and then it sort of turned on the big fucking things, and then it reformed by gravity into the Earth.
Actually,
and
question,
the moon.
like, this is a big question related to this, and I'm just got my understanding. Do you believe that people have been to the moon? Before I get into this part of the question,
I personally do believe that people have gone to the moon.
What's the moon made of? Then what are they standing on? Is it dirt? Is it like?
So
like I've never thought about that for some reason. I've never considered like.
This is what I'm getting at about the moon being made of part of the Earth theory. Mm-hmm. If that was the case, you'd be like, right, it's going to be fucking full of iron because most of the Earth is fucking molten iron. It's going to have like a similar setup to what the Earth is, and it's just not the same. I mean, you can tell they look at it that it's clearly not the fucking same.
Yeah.
But the density of it is so. It's like there's nothing inside it. Is what the weird thing is, and they had a satellite.
You're telling me the moon's hollow?
Yeah.
What?
Well, this is where we get into the conspiracy theory. So. The moon is far less dense than what it's supposed to be. So it like weighs way, way less for what the size of it is what it should be and what it would be if it was made of the same stuff the Earth is made of. But also they had a satellite that was kind of at the end of its life, and it was just basically going to get sucked into the gravity of the moon and crash eventually. So they just crashed it in just to see what seismic data and stuff like that they could get from it. So they crashed it into the moon, and the moon rang like a bell for like hours, like the whole fucking moon.
So funny.
And they were like, what the fuck's going on? Yeah.
I love that so much.
Yeah. So the seismic patterns of it was basically described as having rang like a bell. So it was so, like there was nothing insulative. There was nothing that was stopping the vibrations. It was just like very much not what they expected at all, and they couldn't really explain it. And now they have explainer, being like, oh, it's this and it's that. But it seems like a bit of an airy-fairy fucking hypothesis to me. The next thing coming off that is that the craters that are on the face of the moon, because it's getting constantly bombarded by all sizes and speeds of asteroids, is that you should have lots of varying depths in all of the craters.
Surely it does.
But the small craters and the big massive craters all basically go to the same depth and then just fucking stop. So you got these big massive wide craters, but they're like surface level. Or not surface level, obviously they go deep, but they don't. You would think that they would be big fucking
all the way
chunks
in,
like this, And I'm doing like not hemispherical, but certainly concave.
Yeah.
And instead, it's kind of like it goes down at a slant, and then a big flat bed, and then up again. Kind of, you know what I mean?
Where
So
are all
it's
these
like
square rocks coming from that are
No, not like a square rock, but like whenever it does the
But I'm
impact,
saying,
the
that's what I'm
impact
saying,
goes
like-
so far, and then it hits something that it doesn't go any deeper in. You know,
So
as if
there's
it's
so-
hitting something very strong or very thick, what you would imagine to be like, I don't know, would it be solid bedrock or compressed something?
iron.
Or, you know, a big outer shell of metal because it's a fucking spaceship? I don't know. But it just seems very strange that that's a phenomenon that they've found, is that obviously if you got little tiny fucking things crashing in, they don't go the whole way down the full depth of what the big things are going in.
Yeah, of course.
But you have a variety of asteroid impacts that should all have different depths,
Yeah,
and they're all going and
they
hitting the
shouldn't
same
even- They
depth.
shouldn't even be close to the same realistically,
Yeah.
because like the speed, the size, everything.
Yeah. So I find that very suspicious,
That is suspicious,
isn't it?
I'm starting to get convinced here. I was
Yeah.
going into this very skeptical, but just like the moon, you're not as dense as I expected you to be.
Oh, well done. Okay, the next thing is, as you were saying about people going to the moon. I do
Yes.
think people went to the moon, and a part of it is that the technology that they had in the 60s,
Was capable of it, pretty much. Yeah.
well, not just that, it was that people say, oh, you know, they faked the moon landing and stuff like that. I've seen an analysis that someone did with the shadows that were cast, and all of the shadows were perfectly parallel because the only light source would have been the sun up there.
Yep.
So everything was perfectly parallel. There's none, you know, if you have like a normal light, you got that spread.
Well, like not trying to discredit you here. I'm just saying,
But
like,
that can be recreated.
I'm saying like that you would think about that if you're making a fake moon landing.
But that's the thing. The technology that they had in the 60s, the only way that you would have been able to do that was with a wall that was a bank of lasers, basically, that all shot in the exact same direction. That's the only way that you'd be able to do perfectly parallel shadows
Okay, well,
that don't splay out in any way.
You know more about these things than I do by a country mile, so
But then, again, this could be complete bullshit. But this is just what I've heard, and it makes perfect sense,
Yeah.
is that at the time, as someone did a cost breakdown of how much it would cost, they make that big wall of lasers that would give you those perfectly parallel things, and it would have cost more than what they say it cost for the mission
actual
to the
mission,
moon.
yeah.
So I think if that's how much it cost at that time, with the technology that they had in the 60s, to be able to recreate it, I think it's unlikely
That they bothered.
that they bothered with that, you know, because that's proper detail that, in fairness, a lot of the punters in the 60s probably wouldn't really give a shit about that,
It's fair.
you know.
And like, it's not like,
And the stuff about, you know, the flag waves and stuff, you know, you have solar winds and you got all that kind of stuff. So
don't
I
worry
do
about
think that they went there.
but what was it then? What did they like?
But there's so...
What's it made of? What did they pick up and take back, like moon rocks? Or is it like when what's the concept I'm thinking of? What's the thing you can't take away when you go? Like when you go to the Giant's Causeway, you're not allowed to take any of the rocks. Is it,
No, they definitely brought samples back. It's a good question. I know I looked it up before, but I can't remember what it is. It's not something that really stuck in my head, whatever the answer was. Let's have a look here and see.
It's just you just assume things. Do you know what I'm trying to say? I assumed this. I didn't think too hard about it or look into the moon, because the moon, like you said, I think it more of as a romantic figure than I do as a scientific thing, where I want to learn about the moon. But there's you go ahead if you
So
can.
again, it's Google AI overview, which, you know, do not trust our fucking Google AI overlords. And it's telling me that the moon is primarily composed of rock and metal with a core of iron. Bullshit. But
If it was a core, it wouldn't ring like a bell.
yeah, a rocky mantle and a crust rich in elements like oxygen, silicon, magnesium, iron, calcium, and aluminium. So I don't know where it's getting the... Oh, well, there's NASA. I can ask NASA. See, NASA's saying the same shit here, but I don't know. The lunar core, the moon's center is a dense metallic core composed of iron and some nickel. See, I don't know. I don't know if I believe it. The moon's core is relatively small compared to other terrestrial worlds. So most terrestrial worlds would have a core that's about 50% of their diameter, and the moon's is 20% of its diameter. So again, like if it's made of the same thing as the Earth, why does it have such a vastly different composition?
Yeah.
If it is composed of that, which I'm not saying that it is, but if it is,
It's like I always take these things like a step further of like what like, and you always, generally speaking, you always have an answer realistically. But I always be like, I'd stop thinking about are NASA lying to me about this because I'd be like, well, why would they?
Well,
But
this
then
is the
you
other
get-
thing
see?
well, when you talk about NASA lying about things, because so much of what they release is doctored. Like they have a whole department that doctors photos. Like it is a department
It was
in
Photoshop
NASA.
department.
Yeah, and they were caught doctoring photos of Mars. They make Mars look like, you think of Mars, you think of like red
Yeah.
stuff, because it was like a default filter in Photoshop in the 90s or something.
Ugh.
Like the 90s version of Photoshop.
Lazy on top of
It's
that.
like, and someone said, "Oh no, this is just this filter over the top," and then NASA had to come out and be like, "Oh yeah, sometimes we have to, edit the photos. They make them more appealing to the public or something like that." And it's like,
they're not
it's fucking
Instagram models.
Like, what do you mean, make them more appealing to the public? But so they've been caught doctoring things, and a lot of people, if you look online, you can see that people see where things have been copied and pasted, like the exact same rock formations from here or over here, like copied and pasted in. And especially some of the older stuff, which maybe you would have got away with in the 90s, but now like there's so many people who are so good at it, and they're like, no, I know what they've done here because I can do it. There's a lot of people now, they're just picking out and saying, well, why would you copy that and paste it there? What are you trying to hide? And there's so many.
But to what end is this? To what end? That's I know even we haven't got an answer. You have an answer, I'm sure, but
This is why it's suspicious. To what end? Like,
what end? Yeah.
Why would you have to doctor photos like that? Like, what are you trying to hide? What are you covering up by copying this rock and pasting it over here?
It's just so unusual.
Isn't it?
It's just. What's the point?
And there's a lot of people that have like older photos, or that there's some like undoctored photos are released, and you can see like monoliths and towers and stuff like that, and you go, that doesn't look like a natural formation. And surely, if that tower was there whenever a fucking asteroid hit,
It will be gone afterwards. Yeah.
like, why is it in that fucking crater? And there's a lot of stuff like that, and you just look and think, that's just very strange. And the dark side of the moon as well, which isn't actually the dark side of the moon, as in it never gets sunlight. It gets as much sunlight as the other side. It's just that it's always away from the Earth.
Yeah, so
we've never ever seen.
So the moon doesn't turn around like that?
No.
Okay.
The moon's tidally locked to the Earth.
For some reason, I don't think I understood that even properly.
Yeah. So as the moon spins around the Earth, it always stays facing the Earth. It kind of does this wobbly thing, but it basically faces the Earth the whole time. So there's a whole section of the moon that we never ever see. And any time that they've landed on the moon, they haven't landed on the dark side of the moon, as far as I'm aware. And they have like pictures of it, and NASA has explored the dark side of the moon. But there's very, very little information about it. And whenever you get into the doctored photos and stuff like that, and the fact that there were supposed to be 20 Apollo missions, and they did 17 of the missions, and then they said, right, we're not going back to the moon anymore.
That's actually quite chilling in its own way.
And people were like, "Well, what do you mean you're not going back to the moon?
Don't like the moon anymore."
There's meant to be 20 missions to the moon." They were like, "No, people don't care about the moon." What do you mean people don't care about the moon? People are still talking about it, and we haven't been there since like the fucking 70s, I think.
Surely the dark side of the moon, quote unquote, would actually be more light because the sun's. No, that's just an eclipse situation. Never mind, I'm an idiot. Leave me alone.
No, it's basically the 28-day cycle that you see of like the waxing, waning moon. Mm-hmm. That's basically the sun's relative position to the side of the moon that faces us. So whenever you see half of the moon, then half of the dark side of the moon is also in light.
Yeah.
And whenever you see hardly any moon, it's because all the light is on the dark side of the moon.
Right, I understand.
You know what I mean?
I understand.
So when you have a crescent moon, most of the dark side of the moon is in
lit.
light. Yeah. But as far as I understand it.
So take me to its like most extreme conclusion that you believe, just to humor me. Are we talking aliens? Are we talking?
Yeah, I'm saying that. Like, it may not be, but all the Photoshop photos and just whenever it's, again, as I say, if there's one coincidence or two coincidences, you go, oh, that's strange. When there's like 6 or 7 or 8 coincidences, you go, yeah, that's something's a bit weird. And the moon's fucking weird, man.
The moon is weird.
I'm not definitively saying it's a surveillance spaceship where the aliens live, but I'm just saying you got to entertain the possibility that there are realms of the existence that we don't understand. We're still just above the animals, in the hierarchy.
And we're not far above it.
we're not that far above it.
And our understanding of intelligence is not necessarily even intelligent.
I mean, in the last year, we've already created AI that's smarter than humans. Like if what they've released to the public is this good, what's the military got?
Exactly.
They're fucking 20 years ahead. Like, what's OpenAI are already afraid of what they've made. Like, they're already scared, being like, we shouldn't be doing this artificial general intelligence thing. So we've already created stuff that's ahead of a normal human intelligence, and then they've just released quantum computers that run on qubits, that are both zeros and ones at the same time. They're mind-bending physics going on. That's if we can create stuff that's that advanced, what makes us think that there's not things that are
more advanced
a million years ahead of us? Because this is only really 200 years of advance. Okay, it's 200,000 years of human advancement and 3 billion years of evolution to get to where we are. But really, we only took off in the last couple of 100 years. And if you think of someone's even 1,000 years ahead of us, that's
my favorite.
Massive.
I really like a lot of Michael Crichton books, and that's the guy who wrote Jurassic Park.
Yeah,
he does a lot of science fiction stuff. And my favorite thing about a lot of his things is that when there's anything alien involved, it's never an alien. It's completely subverts your expectation. It's not in human form or not human shape. Sometimes it's just vibe. It just exists in the air. You wouldn't know about it. And that's the thing, is that our imagination can only go so far because of the information that we have. We still imagine aliens as humanoids. Yeah, exactly.
I get what you mean. Especially with all these, the UAPs and stuff. Because the fucking government came out and said, oh yeah, we got all these things that we can't explain, all these fucking UFOs. And they rebranded it as UAPs so that they could say that UFOs exist without sounding stupid. Because they've spent, 80 years denying it and making people out they look like psychopaths for believing in UFOs. They can't just come out and say, oh, I'd say they did exist the whole time. We just didn't want you to know about it. But they rebranded it and then quietly announced it in the middle of the fucking pandemic. And everybody had other things on their mind. It's the same as now. It's all this fucking pyramid stuff that's coming out. It's
well, I haven't heard anything about this because and because you said me something about pyramids. I was I love the pyramids, but I realized that you're talking about something deeper than that.
But I'm very, very skeptical of anything that the government admits to.
Because what's their agenda? Admitting it is the question.
Anyone in a position of authority that's giving away information to people that aren't in a position of authority, I think it's worth.
They have an agenda for that.
It's worth wondering what their intentions are with it. But a couple of days earlier, like the pyramid thing, a couple of days earlier, they released the JFK files, and there's all this confidential information about the assassination of the president, and there's all this weird shit that's in it.
And there's something about it's in the Middle East, not the Holy Grail. What is it?
Mecca? I don't know.
No, it's in these papers, because I seen something about that. What is it? Yeah, leave me away. I forget it because
I don't know that.
It's
I don't
like-
know much about what was released.
it's just somebody else I was speaking to was like reading it in front of me, being like, and here's where they say that not the Holy Grail, something like the Holy. It's that level of like myth almost.
Okay.
Is actually like in the Middle East somewhere, and something about the CIA stealing psychic Mexicans was another thing that was brought up, as in like they have psychic people who can tell the future, and the CIA stole them from Mexico or something. Is that mad? Like, obviously, this is like my version of what I understood of it, but I don't feel like I'm too far behind either.
Yeah, I love all that stuff. I know a little bit about their astral projection programs and stuff like that. That sounds so fucking strange, even just they say that
Out loud, yeah.
But like, there totally was a bit of an arms race between them and Russia about getting these people with ESP, and because there was this guy that had I think he had like an 80% success rate of like being able to like astral project himself into like these areas that no one should ever have been able to be in, and be able to say, "All right, this is on here, or that's on there," and whatever. And he was right so much of the time that the CIA were like, "Right, fucking, let's get this guy."
You're coming with
and
us.
then the Russians had their own version. And there was like this fucking weird thing, and then the guy started teaching other people how to do it. But and they had this weird like room that was sort of set up, and like the Fibonacci. It's not the golden ratio; it's like a spiral thing. They had a room set up like that was supposed to be for like being able to amplify the waves and all this kind of shit. But anyway, we're getting away from
Way off topic.
We're getting
Way
away
off
from the
topic.
moon. But yeah, maybe we'll talk about that in another one. Maybe I'll bring that as my little fucking show and tell presentation for another episode.
So, like, the moon is hollow.
Now again, I have
least.
never been to the moon.
Well,
I cannot confirm or deny these things.
I have I'm really stuck of all the things you've said about today, and most of them have actually struck a chord in some way. Don't get me wrong. I don't think you're crazy or anything.
No.
But
I don't
the
think
one
so
that
either.
the one that sticks to me the most is the fact that the moon rang like a bell. For
Yeah.
some reason, that like it's both funny. For some reason, I can't even explain why it's funny, but also like what? It's just so confusing.
Yeah,
like,
it's
why
bizarre.
does it happen?
It's absolutely bizarre.
Imagine you had. Hey, what's your musical instrument? The moon.
It'd be great to get a recording of it, wouldn't it?
Well, surely they have one if they said it happened.
I don't know.
They can just hear it and go, not going to record this.
Yeah, I'm sure they have a recording. I don't know.
Let's
I don't know
just
if
feel the moment.
I don't know if it's publicly available.
The moon bans mobile phones up there
But
at their
also,
concerts.
Saying that it rang like a bell might have been someone might have been being creative with their words, where it might have just been that the seismic activity lasted for so long
that it was bell-like or whatever.
So that it was
but there
like-
was sound, and really, if there was...
I mean, it could be it might not be a sound that we can actually perceive per se.
It's fair.
It might have just been like seismic waves and activity
there
that
isn't
just kept
sound in
on
space
bouncing
either.
and bouncing and bouncing.
There isn't sound in space either, is there really?
Well, it does have a weak atmosphere, doesn't it? Or does it have no atmosphere?
You're asking the wrong person.
No. Maybe it doesn't. No, I think actually the atmosphere might have been burned away from it.
Realistically, if it made waves, and those waves, in terms of their content, are available in some shape or form, then somebody's recreated this sound.
Yeah, you could always just multiply up the...
That's what I mean, yeah. Until we can hear it.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be interesting.
It would be interesting.
You should look it up.
Is it a drone? Is it a drone, or is it like? Does it have variations? Is my right now in my head?
I would say there's probably standing waves in it, which you would probably be able to hear tones. But yeah, maybe the actual movement from one side to the other would cause like how long it takes to get from one side to the other would maybe cause like a
melody of sorts.
No, not a melody, but like an amplitude effect. So it was like maybe go in and out. Amplitude, like sound.
Oh, I know. I'm just thinking but sometimes you can perceive that as tone. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm going to be looking all into that. But
You know, and I could be completely 100% wrong, but I just think
that's the best part
I
of it.
just think it's weird. I just think it's weird.
There's enough weird there. I
Yeah.
agree. I'm starting to agree. Again, I started this day not considering that I would agree with you about the moon, but I don't think I've ever really disagreed with you entirely about almost anything at this point. Am I impressionable, or are you a good argument, or is it just that you gather enough information to get me right in there?
But that's the thing. That's how I also fall into it, because I think of myself as an open-minded skeptic.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't go into things being like, "Oh yeah, man, Sasquatch." I'm like, you know what I mean? I just like look into these things, go, "Oh, that's interesting. Tell me about that." And then they tell me, I go, "Yeah, that kind of makes sense."
Yeah.
And then the next thing, you don't trust the government, and you're wondering, you know, maybe the fucking tinfoil hats, maybe they're onto something.
Well,
Like a Faraday cage, like I don't know.
I've started getting like in a little bit of a rabbit hole, which is slightly unrelated, very unrelated to the moon, but it's like my own little conspiracy theory, and it's because I'm hearing more about other folk stories from other countries. Like the Philippines is a good example, because I work with people in the Philippines and I ask them these things, or I see something online and ask them to explain it to me. So the most recent one was like how pineapples exist in Philippine folklore, like in general. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Is that if you're too like, so the story is the mother asks the child to look for a spatula, or you know, some sort of
Fish slice.
fish slice.
I don't know. I said that to try and
But
clarify
the
for
idea,
anyone,
yeah.
but I think a fish slice is a very Irish
It's probably
way of saying it.
it is probably less clear than spatula, but but no, you have two things, so it's okay. But anyway, and they're like half-heartedly look, and then give up, be like, I can't find it, and then the next morning, or whatever, somehow I'm not the expert on this, obviously, but the child is turned into a pineapple. Because they think that a pineapple looks like it's just full of eyes. Like a pineapple is a literal bag of eyes in terms of, you know, the wee spikes.
Yeah.
So that's how pineapples existed, is they're all children who were too lazy to look for things. And now they're all eyes. Crazy. But I was going into then like fairy rings, you know, like like people like in Ireland, for anybody who doesn't know, like there's roads that may, like if the government's building a road and they have to destroy a fairy ring, there's been times in the past at least.
No, a fairy tree, not a fairy ring.
Fairy rings.
For the mushrooms?
No, I mean just a circle of hedges and stuff, yeah. So
Oh, okay.
but the idea of fairies is what the point is.
Yeah.
The idea of fairies pretty much will even the government will go to like lengths to not disrupt the fairies that, you know, obviously nobody truly believes in some way.
Well,
not nobody, but I'm saying
no. I'm open.
I'm very open to fairy, but we have that, and in China, there like you'll see buildings in China that have a big hole in the middle of the building if it's so tall, and it's not because of like aerodynamics. It's not because of like, you know, it'll blow over or something. It's entirely so a dragon can pass through it.
Oh yeah,
that's the whole point. They've got dragon gates. That's like,
oh, I love that.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah,
Isn't that cool as fuck? But like they're worried that no dragon comes. You know, he's just going to smash into that building. There's no point. Let's put a hole for the dragon.
I'm here for that kind of logic.
I love that.
That's good stuff. But just to clarify as well, for anyone outside of Ireland, like the Irish fairies are not like the same as what people would imagine a fairy.
Not like Tinkerbell.
It's not Tinkerbell. It's so cutting a very long, lengthy fucking story short. When we say fairies, we mean the she. So the she folk would be the fairy folk, or also called the others, or like the other folk. And that goes right back, and they are pagan heritage, where they would be sort of a mix of the pantheon of gods and what's turned into folklore, somewhat like I always think about like Shintoism a little bit, you know, like spirits of the forest or spirits of whatever. But so you'll have trees and you have cairns, and a cairn is like a stone structure.
Yep.
So you have these sort of like ancient woodlands, and you've got like ancient types of trees like blackthorn and whitethorn and stuff, which would be associated specifically with fairy folklore and the she folk. And it goes back to the Tuatha De Danann in our folklore, who would be the original people, or not the original, but like the pantheon of gods in Irish folklore. And then when the Milesians came, who came from the Iberian Peninsula, who modern Irish people are descended from the Milesians who came. They had a war with the Tuatha De Danann, and the Tuatha De Danann made a deal with them where they would live basically underground in like the other world, and the portals to the other world are these like ancient trees and stone structures. So if you have a hill or like a stone portal, like a dolmen, which is like a stone megalithic portal, cairns, and then obviously the ancient trees, they would all be tied into the legends of the Tuatha De Danann, who are the ancient Irish pantheon of gods, who were kind of, some of them got turned, whenever Christianity came, some of them got turned on the saints and stuff. So you have like Saint Bridget now. Yep. Bridget was one of the Tuatha De Danann. She was like a goddess.
And that's why she had a recross.
And then, but then, so the Bridget's cross was turned into being like a Christian symbol, even though it was originally a pagan symbol. But you see, there's a lot of stuff like that. So whenever we say fairies, we don't mean like, little Tinkerbell, say a wish, put your tooth under the pillow. It's a whole ancient religious, spiritual thing.
But just like you said about your pursuit of knowledge, and you like the pursuit of knowledge, and then like, the more I get into reading about other countries' folklores and things like that, and hearing it from them, because it's more, you can read about things but not really understand how it's like talked about in context and stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like in the Philippines, like they straight up said, like my mom would just tell me, you're going to turn into pineapple with no context beyond that, because they like fucking look harder. You know what I mean? But I almost am like sad that I have knowledge that can explain away things. Like, if somebody were to say that's just how those bushes grow, and but why? Like, why did they do that? And then you can ask why enough that there's no actual real logical answer at the end of it. And now we're back to fairies again, which is great. That's where I wanted to be in the first place.
Because when you said fairy rings to me are the rings of mushrooms.
No, that's part of it too.
But then that's like, people can't explain that and say, it's the way that the mycelium spreads out, and then the fruit and buds come up in a specific pattern, and blah blah blah.
I hate when people, and this is what I'm saying, is that your pursuit of knowledge is the same as my pursuit of like lack of knowledge. I want to forget all that stuff and just be like, fairies, dragons. That's why this is like that. End of story. I'm happy with that now. And like, I like, obviously there's things like the pineapple one where it's probably just like somebody wrote a wee story about it, like somebody just had a wee, what the fuck's a pineapple? Why does it look like this? And then there's to work backwards from there or whatever. You can explain that, but
it's also, a lot of the folklore was there to teach valuable lessons as well.
Exactly.
Like most of our great stories that we have from ancient times are about teaching lessons and morality and
also like safety in some ways, in its own way. But
so that's fucking look for something when your mum tells you to look for it, basically, is like the moral of that story. Which I don't disagree with.
I don't disagree with it at all. But I'm saying I love that pursuit of like lack of knowledge is what I'm looking at right now in my head, is that there's sort of vibes. Spirits. I like that spiritual I'm more interested in that now than I, like you, as a teenager, I was all sciencey. Yeah. In a big way.
And I think as I get older, I realise that I was viewing science in a quasi-religious way as well, where it was like you just put your faith in it and you go, because empirical evidence and blah, blah, blah. Like, you don't ever go and question, and science is constantly evolving as well, but you just take it as like, this is the best guess that we have at the minute, instead of going, this is the best guess of some people who may have biases and maybe getting their funding from a certain place and need to make sure that they continue their funding. And that's what we were talking about before, is the back in like the 1800s, like science was science. People were looking crazy. People were looking for answers, whereas now people are looking for very specific answers that fit a certain narrative. And that's whenever I go, right, well, maybe the quasi-religious nature of putting your faith blindly in science and saying, oh, right, there's no space for anything else. I'm not so sure about it anymore. I'm not a religious guy, but then that's when we come into like the fairies and stuff. I think people can still believe in fairies, and I think that's okay because it's not just like a fairy tale. It comes from our oldest, most ancient religions.
Exactly. But the thing that just like you said about blindly following science as a religion in its own way, like, I just can't imagine blindly following anything. Just like I said about trust before.
I mean, I got you pretty fucking good on the moon, man. I got you pretty fucking good.
But again, I came in skeptical, but open-minded. I was ready to listen. I wasn't just like, shut up, Niall, you're wrong. You're an idiot. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And like, you have to be like that as a person. You can't just accept what anybody... any one body tells you, you know, whether it's church or state. You know.
And I think I was very much like that when I was younger, you know, when I was a younger man. And I suppose everyone goes through that era of thinking that they know everything.
But there's a level of peer pressure involved, you know, where like of hive mind group thinking that comes from being a teenager of like, you know, either these people I like are saying this, so now I'm going to be part of that, or I want to be different, so I'm going to think a different way. So now I'm part of that instead. You know, I've always been the different person for worse, mostly not for better. You know, especially as a teenager, I did some wild ass things, like even just clothes I wore and stuff. I just wore some. I remember being like 16 and going out drinking and like wearing my mother's leather gloves because I was like, fucking leather gloves, awesome. And they were there and she wasn't wearing them. You know, that's just the stupidity of a teenager.
I'd be a liar if I said I never went out with leather gloves on, but I mean, that sounds kind of kinky.
It does when you say it like that, you know, but it was part of a whole costume thing I got going on.
You know, like biker wannabe, you know, and fucking ripped jeans and sleeveless fingers.
Sleeveless fingers.
You know what I mean?
Oh, fingerless shirt.
The old fingerless shirt. But anyway, that's why I think the moon is weird. So people don't need to agree with it because I just fucking talked about how you can believe in fairies. So I understand why people can be skeptical, but I just think there's something that needs a little bit closer inspection.
People should just be skeptical of the moon at least.
Yeah. You know, and that's not to say, I started this off by saying that it's overly romanticized. I think the moon is a very fundamentally romantic thing. If you're sitting under the moon, having a glass of wine,
it feels right.
You know, with someone that you love, you can feel the vibes from it. But it's kind of ominous as well. It's always just hanging there. But it's always just there. You know,
just a slight callback to last episode about 15-minute cities. That's one of the beauties we have of living rurally, is that we can actually see the moon and the stars without any light pollution, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So it's even more romantic than
it is fantastic, you know. It does look fantastic, and whenever you get like a really nice night and you go out, and
it's amazing. You don't want to go back in. Look, you just sit.
But also sometimes when you stare up and you go, "What the fuck is up there?" You know,
what's inside you?
Yeah. You know, or I do anyway. I go, you know,
for whom do you toll?
But yeah, the other thing is as well, when, you know, because the night sky is so clear, sometimes I look up and I'll be like, oh, you know, is that a satellite going by, or is it a shooting star? You know, it's going too fast to be a satellite, and then the thing just fucking changes direction, goes a different way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck was that?
What is it?
Like, we don't
I see things a lot in the sky.
That move like that.
No, I see a lot of things in the sky that I like
no one looks.
Wishy-washy away, you know, is it Starlink or something, you know? But
yeah, but no one looks at the sky anymore, you know. And I think if you do look, there's some fucking weird shit going on.
The harder you look, the weirder it gets. Yeah. The more you look, the weirder the less.
It doesn't even take long.
Understand.
If you spend a half hour looking at the sky, you're going to see some things and
something, at least one thing,
not
at least
be able to really explain what it is, you know. And not that I'm no fucking.
But like, back to like, you know, intelligent design situation of, you know, at the start we were talking about. You know, I can't blindly believe
intelligent design. Holy shit, that's a whole other thing.
I know, but
isn't it?
It's so hard for me to believe that just nothing existed at some point and then it's all just kind of happened. Yeah. Because, like, as you say, we don't really know where the moon came from. We think it came from, like, part of the Earth, whatever that you've explained to me, which I didn't know today. But the fact that then, like, the tides move with the moon and it controls part of the Earth in its own way, you know, and is at least it influences, if not controls.
Well,
that's just cool as fuck.
Yeah,
Like, why would that happen by accident, or is like did it all happen by accident and we've put our own, just like we do with fairies and stuff. We've put our own, like, this is what this really looks like. This is what really happened here. On top of it.
It's a very that's an interesting point. One I forgot about as well is that it would be very difficult for life to have evolved on Earth without the moon there. I kind of forgot about that one. Yeah, so that's another point for it.
Whole point. It's a whole thing.
Yeah. But anyway, I don't think we're here to draw conclusions. Just if I can talk shit and if I made someone out there think a bit more about the moon. Or maybe go investigate it a bit more, even just to prove me wrong. I'll be happy.
If you've questioned your sanity, Niall is right. Niall has had a good day.
Yeah. So we leave it there anyway for today.
I think so.
I think that's it, isn't
That's it.
We'll see you in the next one.
That's the moon.
Yeah, that's the moon. Might be the moon, might not be the moon. Who knows? Might be a spaceship. I do.
For some reason, now I think that something lives inside it. That's the conclusion I've drawn in my own head. Like, who's living inside the moon right now?
I will tell you this. I don't think it's made of cheese.
But we don't know that, though.
We don't know it.
What if it's just pure Wensleydale on the inside?
That'd be so good. We were talking in the last episode about trying to lose some weight. Man,
cheese is a harder one.
Level of cheese was up there.
You'd be on your way.
Couldn't hold me back. But a Comté, nice Comté. No, Comté's too dense, I think.
It would have to be something, a little lighter.
Feta, maybe.
I'm not into feta as much, that would put me off going to the moon.
No, I like a bit of feta.
I don't hate it. It's just like it doesn't excite me the way that other cheeses do.
No, I like a feta. Definitely a wrapped feta. It's oh man, there's a place up in Belfast, an Italian place. It's in St Anne's Square. Can't remember what the name of it is. But they do these little wrapped, like deep fried, like pastry fetas. And then they put like honey over the top of it.
That sounds unbelievable, actually.
So good.
I would try that.
I think any cheese and honey is just the secret. Cheese and honey and something crispy like a cracker. Put it all together. But see Comté as well. You get the Comté, slice it into ribbons. Use like a vegetable slicer. And then drizzle a little bit of truffle honey over the top.
Truffle honey?
Truffle honey, yeah. You got to go to Sawyer's in Belfast.
Have you ever had, what's that expensive honey? I was just looking at it yesterday. That really, like, Manuka
honey?
Manuka honey. I couldn't get that word at all for some reason.
I don't think it really tastes much better. It just has a lot of health benefits.
I know it does, but I keep saying it and being like, going to give me a big 80-pound jar of honey, but I never do. I always check it out.
Better off getting local honey, because local honey is made with a lot of the pollen.
Best. I love getting local. I used to get it from one guy who had his own bees, and like, it's just like, because it's made from your local pollen, exactly like you say.
It helps with your hay fever. And
everything, like it's just amazing. Yeah. It's everything. I really want bees. Bees are in my future. I want bees. I have for a long time.
I know a guy that bought some bees. It seems like they're a lot more work than you would expect them to be.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
But they're pets as well, like, and I just like things like that.
No, yeah, that's it. But anyway,
that's bees. If we can finish the moon episode, the moon is cheese.
Yeah, that's it. So we'll see you next time.
That's it.